all so excited, and he had started getting his vaccines, because normally when they do the transplant, it erases all your baby vaccines. So you're like a newborn. So he had to get the shots, and he had gotten his first round of shots, and he was going to go back to school in May. Then on the 19th of February, he decided to leave us. Yeah.
Wow.
Did you listen to the Hot Breakfast this morning? Here's what you missed.
Esther Mwangi is a teacher in Gilgil, and a child, one of her boys, Al, had a blood cancer when he was young, a lot younger, and he was given a bone marrow transplant by his brother in India. Came back and he was fine, and then a few months later deteriorated, and he passed away this past February. And the mother, Esther, has dedicated her life now to making cancer awareness on the tip of everybody's tongue. She's been walking and walking and walking. She just did 150 kilometers the other day to raise awareness. And she'll keep walking and walking. And she's joined this morning by Dr. Doreen Karimi. She's a pediatrician at Gertrude's Hospital, Children's Hospital here in Nairobi. And of course, Esther's other son, the one who donated the bone marrow transplant, Jack, also joins us in the studio. Welcome, all of you, to the studio. Welcome.
Thank you.
Karibuni sana.
Thank you.
It's such a sad story. I mean, I don't know. Losing a child is the worst thing in the world, Esther. But, you had so much hope because Al actually had a bone marrow transplant. So there must have been so much hope.
Yes. Excuse me. Good morning.
Morning.
I'm trying to clear my throat. Yeah. It was a treacherous journey. Mm-hmm. He got diagnosed when he was just about to turn 5 in 2017. And then I had a whole lot of jargon to learn, and I was thrown into the deep end. 1 minute you have your child, he's healthy, you're playing, and then the next minute you got told your child has cancer. Your world stops. So you freeze. But then again, you don't have time to freeze because you have to spring into action. You have to take him to hospital. You have to ask the questions. You have to think about money. You have to worry about your other child. You have to... Your mind just goes on overdrive, and I don't mean the show.
I'm trying to imagine. By the time you discovered at 5 years he had cancer, what had you gone through? What was it that made you? Were there any symptoms when he was 2, 3?
He got some swellings on his neck.
Okay.
The lymph nodes. Now I know they're called. Mm-hmm. And I saw the swellings, and I was like, oh, that doesn't look normal. And I took him to hospital, and they did some examinations, and they did what they call the fine needle aspiration. Like they take some fluid from one of the swellings, and the first time we got false negative, mm-hmm. and it was December the 5th, and when we got the false negative, we thought, oh, he's all clear, and we went for a Christmas holiday. Then we came back, and in February, a few weeks later, the swellings came back. Now, they were less. In number, they were fewer, but then they were bigger. And I went back to the pediatrician in Nakuru, and he said, okay, I think we have to take one of them out and examine. And so I waited for the results, and then he called me and told me, okay, we have the results, but I think he was a little scared of breaking the news to me. And he told me, you have to go to Nairobi, to Gertrude's, and see this specialist. And I went to the hospital, and when the doctor, I found now, like what do you call it, doctor downstairs?
Outpatient.
Yeah. Sorry. Called the specialist and described, and I had my phone and I Googled the words, and I was like, oh, cancer. By the time he finished speaking on the phone, I had broken down. And I texted my friends, and within 20 minutes, I had 25 girls there. they told each other, and they came, and we all had to think. He had to be admitted. I had come from Gilgil with just what I was wearing. He was at school, so I had to think of how to manage him. Anyway, and the journey started. So lots of tests and lots of things to learn and lots of decisions to make, consent forms, chemo and freezing and depression. And I remember after I went to Gilgil that night and came back the following day so that they could do all the scans, I was sort of in a blackout. I didn't shower for like 3 days, and I was so cranky. And when the nurses and cleaners came to wake me up, I would just tell them, go away. And it was just shocking. And I was looking at my little boy. He was so happy. And all of a sudden I have to just explain to him, oh, please let them prick you. It's not going to hurt. And when they're doing the procedures, you just have to be there, and you're breaking inside, but you have to be really brave for him because he gets his hope from you.
Yeah.
And
let me ask Dr. Karimi, let us step in here if you don't mind. Childhood cancer, like this one, for instance, is that hereditary? I mean, how does that occur one day when you're five years old? It just pops up.
So thank you, Jeff and Nick, for having us today. This is actually a golden month, and we say it's golden because children are precious. And this is our one opportunity to raise awareness about childhood cancer, because there are lots of myths that come around childhood cancer. First, people don't even believe that children do get cancer. And this could be the layman and also healthcare providers. So most of the time, childhood cancer is not inherited. It develops after a child is born. There could be some factors that will be inherited that could predispose a child to getting cancer. But majority of the time, it's probably something just incidental, has nothing to do with any inherited factors, nothing wrong the parents have done. Because that's something a lot of parents grapple with. The first thing they ask you, what did I do wrong? Did I feed my child with the wrong food? Did I not do something to prevent it? And we say childhood cancer is really not preventable. So what can you do? Detect it early.
Are the numbers rising?
That's a very good question, because we have a lot of people asking, how come we hear cancer everywhere? But when you look at it, in terms of the statistics we are almost missing 50% of the childhood cancer cases that we should be detecting. So we diagnose about 3,200 cases a year, but the estimates tell us we should be looking at the population, we should be having about 7,000 cases. So we are just above 50%. So there are 50% of these children that we completely miss out. And the reason is because there's no specific symptom that will tell you this is childhood cancer. You have to have a very high index of suspicion. And if your healthcare provider doesn't think about it, then you end up going round and round in circles. A lot of time is wasted. We have these children presenting so late, and majority of the time, they never make it. So this is so important to us that we really recognize that childhood cancer exists, and we can detect it, and we can cure them.
Like Esther said earlier on, she was in Gilgil and she took the child to Nakuru, and then after the test of the lymph nodes, there was nothing conclusive. Does it happen a lot where doctors just don't get the results then later on? Because I know if that doctor found out a bit earlier, I think a lot more would have been done.
So once again, that's a very good point of view, but what happens is because childhood cancer is a very rare disease.
Okay.
So there are many other things that would cause the symptoms that a child would present with that would be really cancer going on. So most doctors think of the more commoner things, but the most important thing, if symptoms persist, if symptoms really don't add up, it's always good to have a second look And that second look is where now you take it to the next level. Now, God bless his soul, Al was such a free spirit. Al actually went through his treatment. He had what we call a T-cell acute lymphoblastic leukemia. This is one of the common cancers in children. Did very well, went to what we call maintenance therapy, and then right after that is when the disease came back. And that's what necessitated taking to more intense treatment, requiring a bone marrow transplant.
Yeah.
So that, in essence, is not really the full typical story of most leukemia patients, but it can happen. A small group of patients do relapse, and when they relapse, then we have to seek other modalities of care.
Yeah. After going to India, Esther, and you came back, and Al was fine. I mean, you said he was fine.
Yeah, in fact, after the first lot of treatment in Gertrude's, he got better and went back to school.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so that was just
after
the treatment in Gertrude's.
Right.
So he went back to school, sort of back to normal life, and then hospital visits reduced to once a month, and then.
And he was normal. I mean, he was like any other kid.
Normal, playing cricket. Wanting a little bit more sugar, he had a sweet tooth, bless him, and it was heartbreaking to always say sorry, like, "Mommy, can I have a chocolate?" No, maybe once a month, So anyway, so he did get better and was happy in class, had friends, like just your normal, ordinary child. And then I had been trained how to keep a close eye, some examinations to do every now and then. And in one of those routine examinations, that's when we detected the relapse. And then we got thrown back to the beginning again.
This was a period of how long? From the time you went to Gilgil to now when you're giving him chocolates and playing on the relapse?
So he was treated for a whole year, from March to December 2017. So it was back and forth. So between Gilgil and Nairobi, lots of driving and so back and forth. And in December, we got the news that he had gone into remission, which means they couldn't detect the cancer. And then we stayed for over a year because he relapsed in March 2019. And of course, immediately after, we had to ship off to India, where we stayed from March to December.
Another 6 months.
Another 6 months, away. And bless Jack, he had to survive all this time without his mommy. Anyway, so India was tough. It was being away from home in a foreign country and having all those millions of worries about money, about your other children, about this child here. You have to be strong for him, and you don't have your normal household domestic arrangements, so you have to do a lot more. So you're the mother, you're the carer, you're also the playmate. He has no one to play with, so you have to go and try and play with Lego with him. And at the same time, you have to absorb all the information from the doctors. You have to sign consent forms. You have to just face everything. And
did Jack join in India at some point?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
We traveled together when we first went to India, and then they said at that point they wouldn't need him because they had to treat Al's cancer so that he gets into remission, and only after getting into remission would they go to the next step of the transplant. So then he had to fly back home and go back to school, and had lots of people looking after him. Then when he went into remission, and then they tried, we were both 50% match for Al's transplant, but they preferred Jack because he's younger and he's a boy. And anyway, they needed the carer intact, sort of. So then Jack had to fly back to India, and they put him under therapy to harvest his stem cells. Yeah. Then after that, he had to fly back alone to go back to school. Then shortly after that, we went for the transplant, so where we had to go into the bubble. And I think that is one of the worst things a parent can face. Of course, losing him came after, but at that time it was the worst, because they come in every morning with a resuscitation kit and make sure that everything is working before they infuse him with the drugs, meaning that it could go either way. And we were in that room for 40 days. You couldn't go out. You just see the world through the window. And anyway, I think at that time seeing the world was the least of our worries. It's just looking at this sick child and just hanging on to nothing but hope.
Yeah, and this is long before COVID.
Yeah, that was long before COVID. Yeah, but at that time we were already wearing masks because the rooms were sterile, and when even the doctors, even like the most senior, came in, they had to change into sterile clothes. And Al did face a lot of challenges because once they put the stem cells, I'll explain in my layman's understanding. The stem cells are like the seeds from where your blood grows. So they took those seeds from Jack and put them in Al. So they're supposed to take root and start producing blood. But for Al, it took longer than usual. And so he had to get lots of blood transfusions and platelets. Especially platelets was such a challenge. And even after we came back to Kenya, he had not recovered. And he needed transfusions like on a weekly basis. And I was all over like looking for donors. And then COVID came and made everything that much harder with getting the donors. Some of them, you would call them, oh, please, can you come and donate? And they're like, oh, I got COVID, I'm in hospital, And eventually he started making his own blood, which was a huge miracle, because at that point we had all sort of lost hope, and he was headed for another transplant. Then for some financial reasons we couldn't go for the transplant. So when we were buying time, sort of trying to figure out how we're going to get the money, because it was going to take probably another 10 million like before, then he started making the cells. And I remember the excitement when I told Doc, I think the counts are better today. And she's like, okay, don't get excited. Let's wait and see if there's a pattern. And eventually there was a pattern. And by the time he left us, he had stayed for about 6 months without a transfusion. So which was incredible, and we were all so excited. And he had started getting his vaccines, because normally when they do the transplant, it erases all your baby vaccines. So you're like a newborn. So he had to get the shots, and he had gotten his first round of shots, and he was going to go back to school in May. Then on the 19th of February, he decided to leave us. Yeah.
Wow.
At the age of?
2 months to his 9th birthday.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Oh.
And you've mentioned India a lot compared to Kenya. Dr. Maybe you can explain to us why everyone prefers to go to India. Is it there's better service, cheaper, the quality?
Yeah.
Because it then makes sense for someone. In fact, even the cost of flights is another cost that will have been put into better use if they're here. You know what I mean?
Yes.
As a doctor,
Yes.
tell us why Kenyans have to go to India. Just speak into your mic.
Yes, I really like that emphasis as a doctor.
Yes.
So I really want to say that we can treat leukemia in Kenya, and we can treat a lot of the childhood cancers. And Esther is part of a group where we have our survivors. We do have a lot of children who survive their cancer diagnosis.
Yes.
However, there are certain facilities that we don't have in the country. For example, a bone marrow transplant is not done. There are only 2 countries in Africa that do bone marrow transplant. So I think there is really, really a need to invest in mainly our cancer diagnostics. I think we have a big challenge with that. And then in terms of really intensity of care, we also need to start thinking of how to escalate that, because you can see how she really struggled, leaving her little one here, leaving her household, leaving her job. She was away for almost a year and more.
2 years actually.
Actually off work. So I'm very grateful for an employer who really stood by her. So India, on the other hand, really does offer that intensity, and we work closely with them. So not everybody deserves or requires to go to India, but when we require special procedures like a bone marrow transplant, yes, they do. And when they're done, they come back again, and we follow them. So even up until Al's passing on, he was in remission. Actually, you can hear he was going. And it's just one small, simple infection that took us down. As she was telling you, it's sort of the wipe off your whole immune system. So you become very susceptible. But he really had given us all the indications that he was doing very well.
Yeah.
So I could imagine why no one would have suspected that this would. And he had survived so many odds, actually more critical emergencies than this one. So I think it really was Al's time. And I think for us, we really remember Al as a champion. He was our champion. We have a childhood cancer walk every year in March. COVID hit, so we didn't do it. But he was one of our champions, actually. He stood up there and said, I have leukemia and I'm beating it. So shortly after that is when he was diagnosed to have leukemia, a relapse.
Let's talk to Al's older brother here just a little bit. Jack is also joined us. And Jack, I know obviously you must miss your brother a lot. What would you want people to know about your younger brother?
He was like really enthusiastic with everything, and he was really positive. Yeah, and he did everything with energy.
Who do you miss most?
Probably him.
Or just playing with him, just being around him.
I miss like the amount of energy, but like everything would be so, let's say, so energetic, and now it's so quiet.
All right.
I can imagine. Esther, and you're determined to keep walking. You're determined to keep this childhood cancer awareness out there and let people know.
Yes.
What was your latest walk? Tell us.
I did a little hike. Other day in Gilgil, just around home. It was about, I think, 10 kilometers. It was sort of a warm-up after my big hike. Anyway, I walked the bigger one from Gilgil, from Soisambu Ranch to Ngoswani, which is past Narok, 30 kilometers from Narok.
Okay.
Just near the Masai Mara Sekenani Gate.
Okay.
So 155 kilometers.
Oh, but that's not in one day.
Not in one day.
Because Jeff here walks 800 meters and just rest for 6 months.
You walked up the stairs. You felt that. You walked up these stairs.
Now, this, we walked in 6 days. So we did about 32 kilometers per day. With all our gear and the camels. We had the Bobong camels.
Okay.
So what is this? What's the cause? People need to know this.
Yes. So I was raising money for Faraja Cancer Trust. So they usually assist cancer patients. And even for Al's case, they assisted him. They paid some of his bills at Gertrude's. And they also paid another bill for his radiation at the cancer center next to Faraja near Mpisha Hospital. And they also educate people, and they run programs even with the cancer ward, the children's cancer ward in Kenyatta National Hospital. So I thought this would be close to home for me. And you know, when you lose someone, death is so final, and you feel like there's nothing you can do about it because you can't bring them back to life. And I thought, if I do something, then Al's death won't be, his struggle won't be in vain.
Keep his legacy alive.
We can keep his legacy, and we can also touch other children's or other families' journey, you know, because once someone has cancer, like a child or even a grown-up, it's not just them, it's the whole family, it's the whole community, it's the whole world. Because I had a lot of people stand by me, like my employer. So getting 2 years off work and not losing your job, you know, that was quite something. So
Who's the employer?
Pembroke House.
Pembroke House,
Yeah,
the
Pembroke
school,
House, the school.
Okay.
Yeah,
You're still there?
Yes, I'm still there.
And Jack goes there?
Jack goes there.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so they were really gracious.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we have people like Gertrude's who were there by our sides. And at some point, we had no money. Like, all I could manage was food, and even petrol to drive to Gilgil was a problem. But then I really needed the car, because you know, for convenience with a really sick child, you can't put them in a matatu. Taxi would be so expensive. So I had no money, and I would get there and they would tell me, even if you don't have money, we know you've been paying, and you know, who knows, there'll be a ton of fortune, and then you can pay. And I had accumulated quite a lot of debt there, but they just kept letting us access the facilities. So, and even people like Faraja came in and cleared some of our bills. So that's why I thought it would be a good thing to raise money for Faraja, so that they can touch other people's
Absolutely.
lives.
Dr. Doreen, this is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. What do you tell parents out there? They're listening to you right now. What do you tell them? Do they, do they examine their children every day? Do they look out for signs? What are the warning signs? What do you tell them? Not just this month, but, all the time with their children.
Yes. So that's a very fantastic question, Jeff. And why I like it is because I like to speak about childhood cancer with a lot of hope. And to always say that childhood cancer is more than 80% curable. So I know a lot of myths go around that cancer equals death. But a lot of children do survive their cancer diagnosis, and we can do that. But the only way to save life is actually to detect it early. So you bring in a very interesting point, which is then what do I look out for? And we call them early warning signs of childhood cancer. And I say anytime you have your child having fever, and I know fever is a very common symptom for many diseases, but if it persists and goes on, and it maybe is coupled with a little swelling here and there, and you can't quite tell why that swelling is there. If there's any pain is a really good warning sign that there's something going wrong. So don't ignore it. Don't camouflage it by giving painkillers. And I tell my colleagues, please, if a child is complaining, children are out playing. That's all they do.
Yeah.
So if a child stops, think something is happening. And the pain is usually persistent. Headaches. But what type of headache? It's rare to hear a child complaining of headache, but if it does happen and then persists for more than 2 weeks, that's not ordinary. Any swelling in the tummy, so parents need to be feeling the tummies of their babies and feeling if there's anything swollen, get it checked out. Let the doctor tell you that there's nothing to worry about, but let it tell any swelling, any bone is swelling anywhere, that any rashes you can't really explain, but the type of rashes we are talking about are those that we associate with a little bleeding tendencies. So any of that really should. Weight loss. I'm yet to find any children who are in a gym. So if a child is losing weight, I think it's time to pay attention. So small, simple symptoms, as you had, nothing specific, but very big pointers. And so I tell my colleagues and tell most parents, if anything persists, take your child back for another review and don't be wished away. And if they move to another place until you get an answer. We have a childhood cancer initiative where we're working with the counties to teach the frontline healthcare workers what do you look out for? What simple tests do they have at their level of care that would indicate that this is a child? And we say it's enough to suspect. Don't diagnose it. Suspect, refer. send anywhere on that chain in terms of the referral system, and let somebody take a second look so that we don't miss out these children and lose their lives unnecessarily. Yeah.
Good point. Very
Esther,
good point.
you've told us about the awareness and the work. What's planned in the near future in regards to the work, and how can we help you, increase the whatever you're raising for? Because all the donations are going to Faraja, yeah?
Yes, they are. So we have like a pay bill number for Faraja. And first of all...
You can speak into the mic.
Oh, sorry. First of all, there is the awareness. Just for what I would wish is for people to know that children get cancer.
Right.
And the symbol for childhood cancer is the gold ribbon.
Gold ribbon. Thank you very much. Thank you for the ribbon.
And you can wear that. And as you can see, my T-shirt, Jeff, you can read what it says.
Yeah, it says, we can all do something about childhood cancer. It starts with awareness. And then the hashtag is for Al.
For
Al.
Al.
Oh, I thought it was for all before. But it's for, I'm sorry.
Jeff, I've taught you how to read. All has 2 L's. Al is short for Alfred.
Was it Alfred?
Or Alan.
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 That was my second guess.
For Al.
Yes.
Yes, it is for
nice.
Al.
And the pay bill number for Faraja?
Okay, so the pay bill to donate to Faraja to touch another family's life is 509700, and the account name is for Al.
For Al. FOR space AL.
Yes.
For Al.
Yes.
Once again, pay bill number 509700, and the account name for Al.
Yeah, and they can get more details about the hike on my Instagram. So, which is the teacher who hikes and treks.
That is a long title for Instagram. My God, who's going to type in all that?
The teacher who hikes and
The
treks.
teacher who hikes and treks.
You could just leave it at the teacher who treks.
No, hiking is important.
It's a long title.
Yeah.
Mwalimu.
It's where it all started. In fact, mental health and well-being, especially like when you're dealing with grief, it's really important. And I've found that just going to the hills, I've hiked around Elementaita, which is my backyard, the Sleeping Warrior and all those places, and the Elephant Hill. I've also climbed Mount Kenya, but that was before Al's passing. Sorry,
Yes.
I still find it hard to say the other D word.
Yeah.
So I found that it's helping me, like feel less sad. Or when I feel sad, I go for a walk and I sort of feel better, the open space and the fresh air. And that's how I decided to do the trek. It's something I enjoy. It's something he would have been so proud of me for. And I'll keep hiking.
He still is.
Then
He still is, wherever he is.
Yeah.
Again, on Instagram, the teacher who hikes
And
treks.
treks.
Thank you. And then one more thing.
Go on.
Because you see, even diagnosing cancer is such a challenge because it needs lots of money. I remember in 2017 when he had to do the biopsy, it was 70,000, and I was lucky because I had a medical cover, and I was able to pay for that. A lot of families, as Daktari would also know, can't even access that money, which is where our government comes in. They need to do more in terms of supporting families, things like these diagnostic tests. They do support through the NHIF 600,000 shillings per year per cancer patient, which again does not even scratch the surface of the enormity of the burden of finances required for this cancer diagnosis and treatment. So I would really beseech our policymakers and the people who are in those domains to look into this and see how they can support this. And also facilities. I remember driving to Nairobi from Gilgil,
Yes.
panicking because he's got a fever 40 plus and it's not going down, and there's no other facility I can go to because we don't have specialists and we don't have other like what they require to treat cancer in the rural areas. So if they can make this care come closer to home, because currently, Daktari, which other hospitals treat cancer
Other
apart
than
from
Gertrude's?
Kenyatta, Gertrude's, and Moi Teaching and Referral?
Nairobi Hospital.
And you had to drive that Nakuru-Nairobi highway back and forth.
Yeah, all the time. And sometimes I've had no sleep in the hospital, like during the transfusions. And I remember parking on the roadside a few times, and where I was experiencing errors in judgment in traffic and nearly falling asleep. And
You're exhausted.
I'm exhausted. So if this care can be brought closer to home, the counties, they can also bring it the way they have brought the MCAs and they
devolve.
have devolution. Yes, thank you.
We should give that message of hope, because a lot of people are even afraid when they get diagnosed, they run away and go and look for other alternative care because they're so afraid that their child will die. But we can do something, and this is what September month is really, not only raising awareness but giving hope that these children can live to be great people in this nation. And as Esther is saying, let us invest in treating our children. Now, we never know what they can do for this country. And it happens in the rest of the world. So if they can't cure 80%, why should we be comfortable with 20% survival?
Absolutely.
There's so much to do. And everything Esther has said is basically what we need to think about.
Absolutely. September, folks, remember, is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And again, if you want to contribute to that M-Pesa pay bill number for Raja Cancer Support Trust, the pay bill number is 509700. Account name is 4Al.
I think we'll just encourage 1,000 people to put 1,000 shillings to get 1 million, Bob. Real fast.
It's real easy mathematics.
Mathematics.
Thank you so much.
509 700
4L.
4Al.
Yeah. Dr. Doreen Karemi, thank you so much.
Thank you so
Good luck
much.
and
Thank
well
you
done.
for this opportunity. And thank you on the first day of September.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, and thank you
Fantastic.
so much.
Keep taking care of our children.
Thank
Well done. Esther Mwangi, you're a warrior yourself. Al is smiling where he is right now. And young Jack, your little brother's still there, man. Don't worry. He'll always be there with you. All right.
Yeah,
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you. And I would like to, kindly with your permission, to also say thank you, a big thank you to all the people who supported Al in his struggle for the 4 years. So we will never forget.
Absolutely. We'll never forget. Thank you so much. Wow. Powerful stuff. Powerful. This is no doubt what we call
Candid interviews with decision makers.